Hello, my fellow minor league nerds, and welcome to episode 7 of my Throwback Thursday Cap of the Day series. This week's hat is the Nashville Xpress. The Express were members of the Southern League and only played for 2 seasons in 1993 and 1994. But the history of baseball in the capital of the Volunteer State starts in July 1860, when the first game played in the city was reported by the newspaper, the Republican Banner. The same paper also reported that a team called Brownlow's Black Boys Baseball Club, which included 16 African American men and 1 white man, was fined $5 to $9 for playing the game on the Sabbath. It's believed that the team was named for then Tennessee Governor William Brownlow. He was a Unionist before and after the Civil War and was in favor of extending civil rights for African Americans. The city's first professional team was organized in 1885 and was named the Nashville Americans, primarily because the Nashville American newspaper gave detailed coverage of their games. The team tried unsuccessfully to join the Major League Union Association. Instead, they joined the original Southern League as a charter member, playing at Sulphur Spring Park, which was later renamed Athletic Park and then even later named Sulphur Dell. In 1897, the city's entry in the league was called the Nashville Blues. They would lose nearly $18,000 that season and withdraw 2 months before the season even concluded. The city did not field another team until 1893, when the Nashville Tigers joined the league and were managed by George Stallings. The Tigers faced similar financial issues and were surrendered to the league, who ran them for the remainder of the season. In 1895, the Nashville Seraphs replaced the Tigers. They would actually finish that season tied with the Atlanta Crackers. Due to controversy, the Seraphs wouldn't be declared champions until 4 months after the season concluded at the league's winter meetings. The Southern Association was formed on October 20th, 1900. The Nashville Baseball Club was a founding member. In 1908, they would become the Volunteers, later reducing their name just to the Vols. They would play in every season of the league up until it folded in 1961, winning 8 league championships. The Southern Association refused to integrate, and attendance was dropping. The Vols board of directors had voted to actually integrate the team, but the league folded before they could do so. They would return in 1963 as members of the South Atlantic League and would finish in last place. Poor attendance and financial problems led to the team folding after that one season. The league itself would reorganize as the Southern League in 1964. Several Negro League teams played in Nashville between 1920 and 1951. The first was the Nashville White Sox, who were charter members of the Negro Southern League in 1920. They would fold after that season. The Nashville Elite Giants, who are probably the city's best-known Negro League team, played there from 1921 to 1935. A semi-pro team called the Nashville Stars played from the late 30s until the early 50s. The last team was the Nashville Black Vols, who began playing in the Negro Southern League in 1945. They would become the Nashville Cubs in 1946 and split part of the 1950 season between Nashville and Louisville, Kentucky, before returning to just playing in Nashville for the 1951 season. When the South Atlantic League Vols folded after the 1963 season, professional baseball would not return to the city until 1978, when former Vanderbilt Commodores head coach Larry Schmittou put together an ownership team that included country music artists Conway Twitty, Cal Smith, and Jerry Reed. Their group was awarded a Southern League expansion franchise, which became known as the Nashville Sounds. That same year, Herschel Greer Stadium opened, which the Sounds would call home through the 2014 season. They would win the 1979 and 1982 Southern League titles. In an attempt to position Nashville as a future MLB expansion city, Schmittou purchased the AAA Evansville Triplets of the American Association before the start of the 1985 season. The AAA Sounds carried on the history of the AA team. The Southern League wanted Schmittou to surrender his team to the league. Instead, he attempted to move them to Evansville, Indiana, to carry on the name and history of the Triplets. But the league refused to allow the move, and the city of Evansville did not want to pay to upgrade Bosse Field to AA standards. Instead, the team was moved to Huntsville, Alabama to become the Huntsville Stars, who are today known as the Biloxi Shuckers. And this brings us to the Nashville Express. When the National League expanded by 2 teams for the 1993 season, adding the Colorado Rockies and the Florida Marlins, this meant expansion within minor league baseball as well. At the AAA level, the International League would add 2 teams. One was the Ottawa Lynx, the subject of my first episode in this series. The second was awarded to George Shinn, owner of the NBA Charlotte Hornets. The only issue was the city of Charlotte already had a baseball team playing in the AA Southern League, which was also owned by Shinn. This meant he would need to find a new home for his Southern League team. At first, it looked as if the team was going to move to New Orleans, as Tom Benson, owner of the New Orleans Saints, was interested in buying the team and bringing them to the Big Easy. That move, though, was blocked as minor league baseball allowed the uprooted AAA Denver Zephyrs, who had to move to make way for the Colorado Rockies, to move to the city instead to become the New Orleans Zephyrs. Later, they would become the New Orleans Baby Cakes and are currently the Wichita Wind Surge. The Southern League approached Larry Schmittou, owner of the Sounds, about letting the team play in Winston-Salem, where he also owned the Advanced A Winston-Salem Spirits. That ballpark, though, did not meet AA requirements. Instead, the Sounds offered to let the team play at Greer Stadium for the 1993 season. In the agreement, the Sounds would operate the team and George Shinn would retain ownership. The name Express had a dual meaning. It referenced the freight trains that ran along the tracks beyond the outfield wall at Greer Stadium, as well as the sudden arrival and expected departure of the team. The Express would play on days the Sounds were out of town. They would be affiliated with the Minnesota Twins and were managed by former Major Leaguer Phil Roof. In their first season, they would win the first half Western Division title with a 40-31 record, finishing the season with an overall 70-72 record. Unfortunately for them, they would get swept in 3 games by the second half winners, the Birmingham Barons, who would go on to win the Southern League Championship that year. In October 1993, it was announced that George Shinn and Dennis Bastine, owner of the Charleston Wheelers, now the Charleston Dirty Birds, would make a franchise swap. Bastine included all of the Wheelers' assets and over $1 million in exchange for the Express. Shinn then sold the Wheelers to a Charleston group who wanted to ensure the team would stay in the city. The deal was finalized in May 1994. Schmittou agreed to allow the Express to play at Greer Stadium for another season. Roof was back managing the team in 1994. They would fail to qualify for the postseason and have an overall record of 74-66. Michael Jordan, who was playing for the Birmingham Barons that season, visited Herschel Greer Stadium several times. The Express drew 135,048 fans in 1994, the lowest in the Southern League. In July 1994, the Southern League Board of Directors stated that they wanted the team out of Nashville in 1995 and in a permanent location by 1996. Schmittou was also unwilling to have the team back for another season, as hosting them was too much of a financial risk. Bastine wanted to move the club to Lexington, Kentucky, but was unable to broker a deal with the city to build a new ballpark. He then expressed interest moving them to Bayamon, Puerto Rico. This plan never came about due to the increased travel cost to and from the island. After hearing about the planned move to Puerto Rico, the Minnesota Twins began looking for a new AA team. The Express would then team up with the Seattle Mariners, who were also not keen about the idea of sending players to Puerto Rico, so the plan was scrapped entirely. In January 1995, Bastine came to terms to move the team to Springfield, Missouri, where a new stadium would open for the 1997 season. For the 2 seasons before that, the team would play in Wilmington, North Carolina as the Port City Roosters and would be operated by Steve Bryant, owner of the Carolina Mudcats. The move to Springfield, though, never materialized. Just like in Lexington, Kentucky, funding for the stadium was never secured. The team ended up being sold to Eric Margineau, who then would move the team to Mobile, Alabama, where they played as the Mobile Bay Bears until 2019. Today, they are known as the Rocket City Trash Pandas. Some future major leaguers who played for the Express include LaTroy Hawkins, Brad Ratke, Eddie Guardado, and Damian Miller. Well, my fellow minor league nerds, that's it for this week's episode. I do hope you enjoyed it and maybe you learned something new. Be sure to give a like or leave a comment, and if you want to know about every time a new episode is uploaded, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for all your support. I do appreciate it. Stay safe, and I will see you next week.